Welcome to the Adventurous Minds podcast, examining fitness and wellness through the lens of outdoor sport and adventure.
Hey everyone, welcome back to Adventurous Minds. For episode 4, we sit down with surfer Nat Young to discuss life at the highest level of surfing, the WSL Championship Tour. Growing up in Santa Cruz, California, Nat was surrounded by a high level of surfing from the start. After showing promise at a young age, Nat made it onto the WSL qualifying series in 2008 and finally made the jump to the WSL Championship Tour in 2013. After a few seasons on the CT, Nat fell off in 2017. The following years tested him in many ways, but he battled his way back on in 2022. Nat had a solid season last year and is off to a great start in 2023. He's got a lot of fans around the world, and it's not a surprise at all. He's a great guy and elite surfer. Can't wait for you all to listen to this one in episode 3, starting now. All right, Nat, thanks for coming on the podcast.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Timmy. Stoked.
Yeah, it's cool to chat with a Santa Cruz local. As you know, VO2 is based out of Santa Cruz, and I went to school there, so anyone I think who spent some real time there knows how special of a place it is, and I miss it a lot.
Yeah, I think Santa Cruz is definitely a very special place. I don't know. I'm definitely thankful to have grown up here, and I also look forward to coming home when I go away on trips, and so just the ocean here and the nature, and it's a beautiful place. So I'm thankful to be able to live here. Yeah, I'm at home. It's my off season right now, so just been enjoying some home time. It's getting cold now. It's definitely feeling like winter.
Yeah, I know. It's getting dark early. It's kind of awful. Like, it's raining and dark right now. I'm like, ugh, I want to turn back the clock a couple months.
we just went through that. It was like raining for a few days, dark early. It was yeah, the seasons are changing for sure.
Yeah, and Santa Cruz is wet in the fall. It's like one of those things that unless you've kind of spent time in central Northern California, you don't realize how wet it is up there sometimes.
Totally. Yeah. It's I feel like right now it seems like it's a bit more like rainy and winter feeling like than most Novembers and Decembers in my memory, but I don't know, every year is different. So I feel like a lot of the times, like November, December, I remember it being like still like those nice, like kind of almost summery days for like a majority of those months. The waves are usually pretty good around this time of year, and it's been not so good. So maybe that's why it just seems a little off to me. But yeah, either way.
I mean, that's kind of the beauty of Santa Cruz in a way is like, I mean, one of the great things about it is you could pretty much find a wave to surf any day of the year. Like if you're willing to drive 30 minutes, whatever it is, I mean, you can always find somewhere, something going on.
100%. You can surf every day of the year if you want to. It's just like, how much effort do you want to put into that surf? You know, there's definitely like when I was younger, like I would, spend hours looking for waves on days when it's flat, and like kind of at this stage, I don't quite venture out as much as I once did to surf on the small days, but you can if you want to.
Yeah, I mean, for me, it was a crazy adjustment being in a wetsuit, in a thick wetsuit the whole time, and then also kind of worrying about sharks and like, I don't know, I was always like way too worried about that. I was like, going north was always like an adventure for me.
For sure. I mean, I think like anywhere you're not like, you didn't grow up in those waters or like can feel probably sharkier than it actually is. Yeah, like some places, like I know where I'm from is like known to be sharky, but I don't really like ever like get that sense of like that sharky like sense. I don't know. You know what I'm talking about? Like when you get that feeling.
Totally. And like, it's weird because you kind of, I mean, I lived there for 4 years, but it kind of never went away for me. Like it takes longer. I mean, obviously to a degree, but like I was still like thinking about it. Like it takes time for that sort of thing to go away, at least for me.
I don't know. It's probably just because like repeated like session after session of like me not seeing sharks. I'm just like probably, the odds are likely like in your favor not to see one. but obviously I know they're there and they're probably pretty close by a lot of the times, but I just try not to think about it too much.
Yeah, for sure. Well, so I want to get into surfing. I want to get into your career on the CT, being a dad now. But first off, I thought we'd just go backwards a little bit and see what it was like growing up in Santa Cruz.
Yeah, I mean, growing up here I was able to kind of I had a lot of things that I was able to do in terms of like sports and different types of things in the nature, like going into the beach and the ocean, going up in the mountains. You can go snowboarding. Tahoe's not too far. So there were just like a lot of options as being younger, and kind of the different things you can get into. There's a lot of mountain biking here. So there's just like so many different options to how you want to fill your time and what you want to do. So I kind of, when I was younger, I played a lot of sports. I skateboarded, I surfed, I snowboarded. I kind of did everything, and surfing was kind of the one thing that kind of captured most of my time and the thing that I wanted to dedicate all my time to, just because I was having the most fun doing it. So yeah, I mean, growing up here in Santa Cruz it's a good place to be a surfer. There's a lot of good waves here. There's a huge variety of different types of surf and different conditions and different there's beach breaks and just a variety of coastline up here. So it's a good place to be a surfer.
And were your parents surfers? Like, how did you actually, I mean, obviously I can see how it would be easy to get into it just by living there, but was there like someone that pushed you into it, or like what was that initial bump into it?
Yeah, my parents both were surfers. But actually by the time like they had me, neither of them were really surfing a whole lot, but we were kind of like a beach oriented family. Like my mom, would take me down to the beach like every day. So just being at the beach, you kind of like develop that love for the ocean and being in the ocean at all times. And it kind of started with boogie boarding, kind of as most kids would. And it kind of progressed into surfing. And that was just kind of the introduction I had to like going in the ocean, catching waves, all of that. And it kind of just like snowballed from there. It's just been my life since I was a little kid, and it only feels normal now to kind of spend time at the beach and live that type of lifestyle.
Yeah. And so when did you kind of like, you got into high school, did you start taking surfing really seriously then, or was it still just kind of this thing that you loved? Like, was there ever a conscious decision of like taking this towards taking it towards competition, or was that later in life?
Yeah, I'm a pretty competitive person. So, I mean, I played baseball, soccer, basketball, and was pretty competitive with those. And so as soon as I started surfing, like, I just wanted to improve and surf as much as I could and be out there constantly and trying to get better. And not too soon after I started surfing, like I began competing. So it was pretty quick. But I don't know. I love competing. Competing is like a big part of my life. I feel like it brings out the best in me. It makes me strive to be the best version of myself that I can be, and kind of I just like everything that comes with competition and the training and all the hard work that you have to put in and the discipline and everything. It's just that's why I like it. And so it wasn't like there was like a certain day that I decided I wanted to compete. It just kind of like came as I started progressing with surfing and felt like I could, okay.
And that makes a lot of sense. And as we were kind of going to schedule this, we were talking about, or I was saying maybe we should do the podcast next week, but next week is the Coldwater Classic. And from what I understand, the Coldwater Classic, that was kind of the original competition that kind of put you on the map. Is that right? Because you were like 17 when you won?
Yeah, kind of. I won it when I was 17, which was definitely a highlight of my career and unexpected for me at the time. Like it was a lot. It was a pretty young age to win that contest. So um, I don't know. I mean, it's an iconic contest here in Santa Cruz. Like us growing up here, that was a huge part of like the surf culture here in Santa Cruz. Is that Coldwater Classic? Being like a young kid and watching like the top pros in the world come to your home break and surf that wave. So it's always been, to Santa Cruz, it's been a big event, and it's taken some time off, and it's coming back next week, which is really cool. And it's awesome for the community of Santa Cruz and all the young kids here that surf. And it should be a fun week for sure. So we're looking forward to it.
Yeah, it's gonna be super fun. I used to love. I mean, I can't remember what they were. They could have just been like high school competitions, but just going down onto Westcliff and watching these competitions, the energy there is so fun because there's so many spectators that are like really into it. It's not just like I don't know. You feel like you're really rolling up on an event, even when they're really small.
Totally, and like the lane is like such a good wave for a contest because it's got that stadium atmosphere that no other wave in the world has, just because you can stand above where the wave breaks. So you're basically like looking down at the competition and you're like right there. People that are on the cliff, you could hear them talking when you're in the water. It's a cool vibe, and it's like the whole cliffs are lined with people, and it's I think the lane's definitely like it's an awesome stadium to have a surf contest. So it's cool to see it back for the next week, and for all the younger kids that are going to be down there get to see it in person.
Yeah, it's cool. It's like you get a natural kind of drone view on a wave, which like you're saying, is so rare.
Yeah, it's rad, and it'll be exciting to see the turnout. It's been some years since they've had it, so I feel like there's a little buzz around there in town, even though it's just a small event. It's going to be fun.
Yeah, anything that gets the community going is going to be, it'll be super fun.
Totally.
So after you won that, what was kind of, you were still in high school, and then, you joined the CT, a few years after that. What was that kind of in-between period like? Was that a pretty focused time when you're like, all right, I'm going to like turn, I'm going to go get on the tour and become a professional surfer? Like, what was that era like for you?
That era was kind of an interesting time of like in my career, because you come out of these like the junior NSSA is what it was called when we were younger, and you're kind of used to like doing well in all the competitions you do, and we have a competition every weekend basically, so like you get pretty used to like winning or making the final, having a lot of success, and it just kind of becomes normal. And then once you graduate out of that, you're surfing against guys that are, a lot older than you, have a lot more experience than you, have been doing it for a lot longer than you. I think you kind of come in feeling like you're going to have that same type of success that you had. And so on the QS, in that range of that age range, like it's a big adjustment because it's a lot of losing. It's a lot more losing than it is winning. It's like basically traveling the world and not doing good in a majority of the contests. So it takes a lot of like mental strength to like kind of get through those times. It's a lot. Like you put all this effort into it. You spend all this time traveling around the world. It costs a lot of money to do. And you could go to South Africa and lose first heat. So it's like, it was a time that was definitely like tough, and like you just kind of got to like know that it's going to take some time. It's going to take some learning. It's going to take some trial and error to figure out what works and how to compete against the best surfers in the world. So it was tough for sure. I think a lot of people would say the same. There's a few guys that breeze through it pretty easily, but for the majority, it's an adjustment.
Yeah, I bet. It seems like it's probably as hard as it is, probably like a decent humbling experience, kind of like kicking you a little bit as you come out of high school, and it's like, all right, this is the real world, and these are the top dogs. Like, it seems like it might be a little bit of a good thing, but I could see how that's really hard for sure.
Totally. No, it's a good thing. Like, you need to go through some tough times and kind of test yourself, and from those times you realize that you need to work harder and you need to improve in these things and dedicate more to it. So in the end, it's all for the better, but it's just like quite an adjustment as like a young kid that's used to like kind of everything going their way to like then just kind of being thrown in the pit right there and kind of out on the world. Like, you're basically traveling the world with like a group of your friends, kind of like, so.
I mean, it seems like the dream in a way. Like, I mean, like I know it's so hard, but it's like you're traveling around the world with your friends and you're surfing. It's like, it's like such an idyllic lifestyle in a way.
It is, totally. It's the dream. And it's like, when you look back at it, you're definitely living the dream, but it's also like, it can be very challenging to, put all that time and effort in and not do well, and kind of on a consistent basis. Like, it can test you for sure.
And that's something I'm always curious about, because with any sport and competition, it's really like how you're able to manage the lows, like how you get through the losses, and when you thought you were going to do well and you didn't. Or, I mean, with surfing, there's a whole other variable of like, if Mother Nature doesn't perform for you, it's like, was that a time where you kind of started to build that mental strength that would take you, well into today?
Yeah. I mean, surfing is a crazy sport. There's so many things that are out of your control, and it's just that things can go your way or they can not go your way any 30 minutes. So like, I guess it just comes down to like trying to like limit the things that, or at least the things that you can control. Try to like, check every box, make sure that you're as prepared as you can be. And then once you're out in the ocean, it's like, just kind of reacting off of instincts. And we've all been spending most of our lives in the ocean. So it's kind of just like based off like feel and instincts, and kind of getting out of your own way. Because the more you overthink things, that's kind of what a huge learning lesson for me was just like getting out of my own way. Because the moment I started to like think about things, and that's when I started to have like a really hard time and overthink things. And so that was a huge thing for me, is trying to think less.
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of people can relate to that. I certainly can. It's I can easily point to the times when in anything, when I'm kind of like performing at my worst or not where I want to be. It's like I'm overthinking it. I'm doing way too much right now. Was there any like specific strategy or anything that you did that kind of help you get back to the moment a little bit, or is it just kind of like a grit, like slowly learn over time sort of thing?
No, I mean, it's a weird like to try to get into that like mental headspace of just like of kind of reacting and not thinking, is like, you wish you could always be in that headspace and like always get there. I mean, I feel like that's, like you said, like that's when kind of everyone's at their best. It took me, I had like definitely like a really rough patch of my career where I was, like I said, I was overthinking everything, questioning everything I did. And so it took a lot of work for me to kind of find that place again. And I did a lot of meditation and tried to work on like the mental aspect of it, and feel like I've gotten myself into a better headspace through all of that. But I definitely hit like a rough patch there and had to, try to find that magic place again where things just seem to happen naturally instead of being forced.
Yeah. Yeah. So, okay. So going back a little bit. So when you first got onto the CT, what was that like? Was that, I can imagine that you get there, or you qualify and you're like, all right, I have all this motivation and I don't know. Like, I feel like that must be such an exciting time. What was it like when you first got on there?
When I first got on, at first it was like a lifetime accomplishment. It was like a goal of mine, like a life goal of mine that I had accomplished. So I was over the moon. I mean, I was super excited. I was going to be able to surf against guys who are my idols that I've watched movies of growing up my whole life. Mick Fanning, Kelly Slater, Taj Burrow, Joel Parkinson, those guys. Like, being in the same competitions as those guys was like kind of hard to like wrap my head around at first. But then once like things got closer and the competitions kind of were coming up, I was extremely motivated, and I felt like when I first got on tour, I felt like I was kind of the underdog and no one really like expected much of me, but I knew myself, and I knew what I could do, and I was excited because I felt like I could prove a lot of people wrong. Like I said, I come from Santa Cruz. The waves are extremely good here, and the waves on the CT are good. So I felt like I could have a seamless transition to doing well on the CT. And I kind of got rolling with some momentum from the start. I made a final and had a pretty good few years there. And yeah, it was like I said, it was a dream come true, traveling the world and surfing the best waves.
And that confidence probably goes a long way. Like that kind of initial confidence of like, okay, I come from Santa Cruz. I know how to surf these waves. These are good waves. Like I'm good. Like I feel like you could like the mental side of feeling like you're meant to be there and that you're going to do well is part of what we were talking about earlier about being in the right headspace. Is like, that's part of showing up, and that's kind of really help you perform.
Totally. For sure. I mean, yeah, like after spending all that time on the QS, the waves are terrible. Most every comp is in like conditions where you probably wouldn't surf the majority of the time if it looked like that at home. So that was tough. But getting onto the CT and getting to surf the best waves in the world, I was just extremely excited to be able to surf those waves with one other guy out. And like I said, I knew what I was capable of, and I felt like, if I was able to go out there and do what I could do, then I could have some success. And yeah, it was definitely, those first few years on tour were some of the best years of my life for sure. And like I said, getting to see all those places and surf those waves was the highlight of it all.
I'm sure. So to go forward a little bit, you ended up dropping off in like 2016. Is that right?
Yeah.
What was, you're coming off one of the biggest highs of your life. What was, I'm sure that was pretty rattling to say the least.
Yeah. Yeah. It's kind of like when you're having some success and you're doing well, you like don't ever think that you could like kind of fall off or, hit a rough patch. But yeah, that year I hit a rough patch and wasn't competing like myself, was making like a lot of bad decisions, and felt like I was kind of like everything was working against me. I had a lot of personal things in my personal life going on. And yeah, it's just interesting, like when you're in a good place in your life and everything seems to kind of like synchronize. Like if your life's good and everything's going well, like the competition aspect of your life kind of seems to like come a lot easier. And when like times outside of or like things outside of competition and your personal life like aren't so smooth, it just seems like you're like trying really hard to like get this thing right, but it's not quite working. And I felt like, I know that was going on in my life. And so, yeah, I was having a hard time, and I couldn't really like pinpoint what it was, but I just I feel like I just questioned everything that I did.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those things where I feel like in life, when you have momentum in a good direction or a bad direction in one aspect of your life, it's absolutely going to affect everything. You know, when things are good, it's just going to keep rolling, and things are going to like stay good. And yeah, it's easier to, get through the lows, and it's kind of like you almost have like an endurance, a more endurance for that sort of stuff. But obviously, the opposite's true as well.
Yeah.
So then, you're off for a couple years, and you go back to the QS, and you're just working hard. Like what's going on there?
Yeah, during the time when I was struggling, I was putting like everything, all the effort I had into trying to like rewrite the ship and fix it and get this thing going right again, and training as hard as I possibly could and trying to do everything, and maybe trying to over control things a little too much. I felt like I was trying to like control everything, when in surfing there's a lot that you can't control.
It's arguably the sport that has the least control in it.
For sure.
Professionally.
I don't think there's another sport that there's more variables. There's no way. Like golf, you walk up to that ball's it's gonna be right there the whole time. It's not gonna move. And so yeah, dealing with those variables, sometimes like you can get too down on yourself, and you can question yourself a little too much, or the things that you're doing. So, I mean, in the end, I think like, had I not overreacted to everything and just kind of like wrote it out and just trusted myself and trusted the things that got me to that place, things, could have worked out differently. But, I kind of abandoned ship and started seeing this guy doing that and this guy doing this, and thinking I needed to change everything that I was doing. But in hindsight,
Well, sorry, I was just going to jump in. Did you, was there anything that you changed that you think was a positive change? Like, yeah, I'm sure, obviously you changed a lot, but was there like, like what were some of the good things that you did?
Well, I think I started working on like the mental side of it all. And like I said, trying to quiet my mind basically, because it was just like running 1,000,000 miles per hour. And that's something that like has stuck with me. And, maybe had I not gone through a time like that, would I have kind of tried to incorporate that into like my routine these days? So that's a positive. I feel like there's a lot of positives that obviously come from a time like testing times like that. But I mean, I don't know if you want those things to happen, but like you obviously learn a lot from a time like that. You're going to learn more about kind of yourself and what works for you and all that when things aren't going your way, rather than when it's just coming easily. You're not,
Yeah, totally. I mean, I would never wish like someone to have a ton of bad things happen to them, but you definitely want like your fair share. Like, you need some adversity to get through, and some stuff to, you need to know what it's like when things aren't all happy and great.
Totally.
No.
That's when everyone like, becomes a better version of themselves, is after they go through something like that. But yeah, I mean, I guess like the biggest thing I learned was like that, those times will happen, but it's kind of just like trusting yourself and like trusting in like all the work that you do and everything, and like, not trying to overreact, and just kind of like, it can happen, but like that I can get myself back without having to like, without having to change like my entire life.
Yeah. I mean, I can see how, like, particularly in surfing, how it could be so frustrating where, like, you get into a heat and just the waves don't come, or like, you make a mistake on like the one kind of chance you got. Like, I can see how that would be particularly frustrating, because it's like, in soccer, it's like you miss a pass. all right, you're going to have 100 more within the hour. Like, you know, there's way more ways to redeem yourself, but you just get so few chances that it feels more volatile, and that need for mental clarity is so much higher in a way.
Yeah, totally. I actually had this conversation with someone who was a swimmer, and I was like, because I was like, those are two sports seem like the complete polar opposite, where like swimming, like everything is in your control, like nothing. So it's completely up to you whether like you have a good race or a bad race, right? Like there's no outside factors that can like hinder your performance. And then like surfing, there's like so many things that can like you said, like you cannot get the wave, the guy can get the wave in the last 10 seconds, you can fall on a wave. But like for the most part, when I lose a heat, I know why I lost the heat right after the heat ends. Like I'm able to be like, that mistake right there is why I lost that heat. And I was wondering what it's like when if you're a swimmer and you lose a race, like what do you do? Do you just go, that guy was better than me, or was that, I don't know. It's an interesting two sports to compare because they seem opposite.
Yeah, I get that. I mean, it is interesting because I could see as a swimmer, it's actually really complicated to like try and figure out what went wrong, because it's like, you know, if someone's beating you, particularly, I mean, just in something like endurance, it's like there's just a million different things that you could pinpoint. Yeah. It's almost nice in a way that you can be like, oh, I know I did that wrong, like whatever. But yeah, that's a good comparison.
With a surf contest too, you could be like, a lot of the times when you lose, it's like you either lose because you didn't get the right waves, you fell, and then sometimes you're getting out surfed. But like a lot of the times you're losing by making mistakes. Whereas swimming, I guess you're getting outperformed, right? Like the guy was better on that day or something like that. So it's easier to take like a loss in surfing because you can be like, oh, I just didn't get, the wave didn't come. You know what I mean? You're like, next time, hopefully the wave comes, or I fell, next time, hopefully I don't fall. You're not like going home, that guy beat me. Or, I don't know. I'm not, a lot of the times at least. So it's an interesting.
Well, one thing I'm curious about is like, there's obviously a handful of factors that there's a lot that you don't have control of, but obviously there is a lot as well that you do. The guys that are consistently like, let's say top 5, who are like, they seem to always make it through heats, or at least have like a really solid chance. What do you think it is that they've got that's kind of like getting them through that? Because it feels like the competition's so tight, but they somehow kind of always make it in through those heats. Is there anything like that you can pinpoint there?
I think the most important thing is confidence. I think those guys that are doing well consistently just have that confidence of like, because I've been in that headspace too, where you're just like, every heat you're just like, oh, I'm gonna find a way to beat this guy. Like I might not need the best wave, but I'm gonna find a way to beat this guy. You almost think you're like untouchable, and I think that you can tell the guys that have that confidence throughout the year. Obviously their skill level is top notch and top tier, and they just don't. They're so confident that they're not second guessing anything. They're like, they know what a good wave looks like. They're gonna wait for that good wave. They're gonna execute on that good wave, and they're good enough to where if they do that, then they're gonna make probably 99% of the heat. So, in my opinion, that's what it is. But there's also, a couple freaks of nature that don't need good waves at all and are just so good at airs, and they can make it happen and whatever. But I think confidence is huge. I'm sure that goes with everything in life.
Yeah. I mean, I find it, I really like watching it. I mean, kind of any extreme or adventure sport. I mean, it's fascinating because you see the competition, particularly in extreme sports, is so high at that top level, like where everyone kind of feels like they're in the range of winning.
Yeah.
And, you know, particularly in competition, it's like everyone has the same tricks. Everyone can do the same thing. It's like who can just consistently do it and who's got the confidence to kind of do it with the most style. And it's really interesting, like with snowboarding stuff, because you can see the confidence on them, you know, and they go up and do some crazy trick. And it's like from the moment they drop in, there was something different about this guy than the other. And it's just interesting that you can like physically see it in a way.
Yeah, you can see like you can almost like tell like when the guy's like walking out that they're like, you know, that they just feel